My first question is, did you know your aunt very well, and were you close to her?
Oh, yes. Let's see. My aunt, Peggy Parish, who's the one who created Amelia in the first place, she was a school teacher, and she taught the 3rd grade for about 12 years. And my father, her older brother, was in the Air Force, and so we would travel around, and I'd be, a year here or 3 years there, and then a year here. And during the summers, then, since she had, time off, she would come visit us. And so we'd always be we'd be stationed in places like, New Jersey for a year, North Dakota for 3 years, and then Wyoming, all these wild places. And so she would come and stay with us. And in fact, she stayed with us for several months one time when after she had become a full-time writer.
Do you know why your aunt started writing the Amelia Bedelia books, or what was her?
Yeah, like inspiration.
Yeah,
like what she had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think she'd written a couple of books before Amelia Bedelia. She was sort of finding her feet, so to speak. Not literally, not like Amelia Bedelia, but your feet are right there, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think the first book she wrote, she used to play a game in her class called "Is That What You Mean?" And what it was whenever you heard something that sounded a little strange, like "draw the drapes," you could say, well, do you mean draw the drapes, like draw a picture of the drapes, or do you mean close the drapes? So she would keep little lists of these things. She thought it was a pretty funny way to teach idioms and homonyms and homophones. And so she made a little list of these, and from that came the idea for Amelia Bedelia, the housekeeper who takes everything literally. Mm-hmm. And so I think part of it was her class inspiration, and then part of it was, and this is a story I did not hear from my aunt, this is a story I heard from her cousin, Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, who Amelia Bedelia works for. Mm-hmm. There actually was a Mr. and Mrs. Rogers. They were my great-grandparents, her grandparents. And they used to go over for Sunday dinner. And Mrs. Rogers had a lot of help, because there were like 20, 25 people for dinner sometimes. And so there was a full-time cook, a full-time housekeeper, and a younger housekeeper who was really good with children, but she was kind of hopeless when it came to housework. And this cousin told me that one time the main housekeeper was sick, and so they had to rely on this young housekeeper, and they said Mrs. Rogers told her to sweep around the room. And so what she did was she swept just the edge of the room. All the dirt and dust in the middle, she didn't touch that. Which of course sounds exactly like Amelia Bedelia. I heard that, I thought, aha, this makes a lot of sense. So I think it was really a combination of the two. The fact that my aunt was very literal herself, and also this young housekeeper, I think, played a role in it too.
What made you want to continue writing those Amelia Bedelia books?
Well, I don't want to call it a funny thing happened, but a kind of a strange thing happened. Is my aunt passed away pretty young. She was 61 years old. I know that may not seem young to you. Okay? I remember when I was your age, I thought 61, you're like a fossil if you're 61, but it's getting younger to me all the time. And all of a sudden, boom, she was gone. She'd written 12 Amelia Bedelia books before she passed away, and also it was the 25th anniversary of the character, and so she really got a sense that this character was gonna, certainly outlive her, which it did, and just go on and on. And what happened was, kids had no idea if she had passed away. They would write to my aunt. And they would write her great letters like, if it weren't for you and Amelia Bedelia, I wouldn't be reading chapter books, or I wouldn't be reading at all. Kids would write in and say, I loved your last book, Miss Parish. When is your next book coming out? We'd always have to write back and say, I hate to tell you this, there aren't going to be any new Amelia Bedelia books because there's no more Peggy Parish. So this went on for about 5 years. She was getting about 2,000, 2,500 letters a year.
Oh,
and
man.
So after about 10,000, 12,000 letters later, we thought, well, gee, maybe there should be new books. And I had experience writing, very different kind of writing, doing television commercials for advertising. I know it may not seem like it a lot of times, but there are actually people who put a lot of thought into those. Okay? And so I figured, well, maybe I could figure out how to write a book. And so I gave myself a deadline, being in advertising. And I said, in 1 year, I'll figure it out. And within about 8 months, I came up with enough ideas to do a book called Good Driving Amelia Bedelia, where Mr. Rogers and Amelia Bedelia go out for a drive in the country. If we made the number of mistakes that Amelia Bedelia did, we might think, oh gosh, there must be something wrong with me. I must be stupid. I must be dumb. And she doesn't ever think of that. She just sort of like, oh, is that what you mean? Oh, okay, I got it. And now she goes to the next mistake. And a lot of times she'll sort of bake her way out of problems. In the first book, she bakes a lemon meringue pie. It was so funny. I didn't realize it until just a couple of years ago that was not on the list. That she made that lemon meringue pie just to be nice to them. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way to sort of save your job at the Rogers house.
Okay. If you ever stop writing the Amelia Bedelia books, or if you die?
It takes a child to really ask these kind of questions. It's like, how much money do you make? All the questions adults are dying to ask. Well, what happens when you die? Is that the question?
Well, will anyone continue, and if you know, who will?
I have no idea if anyone would or would continue it. I mean, it's rare that it is continued. There are only in a couple of instances where it's been continued, like Babar the Elephant. I think the first maybe 3 or 5 books were written by, who is it? Is it Jean de Brunhoff? It's one of the Brunhoff. And the father wrote them and then passed away, I think, of tuberculosis. And then World War II happened, so the whole world was distracted. And then his son picked it up later, and he's the one who's written, continued the series. I don't know. I'm not really thinking about it too much. And I have a lot of ideas, and certainly there's no heavy lifting involved, so I could probably keep this up for a while. Okay?
That's all my questions.
Well, thank you. Those are great questions. Thank you so much.